soon.
Well, that doesn't make sense. She said, well, I don't know why there's such a separate one. She thought they should have worked in this up for themselves for 2 years. It's too confusing.
When he was with I know you like this milk chocolate.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for attending this exclusive event with us this evening. Before we begin, can I please request that you switch your mobile phones to silent or switch them off? Otherwise we will point and stare. We are absolutely delighted, nay overwhelmed, to have Zindzi, Mandela and Christo with us this evening. We're also absolutely thrilled to have Barbara Jones with us this evening, who I'm going to hand over to. So without further ado, Barbara. Is this actually on?
It's great to see everybody, thank you. And incredible to have Christo here. And he and I feel that we were never going to get to it. But here we are, and we have Zindzi here too. So that's even more amazing. And her son Mandela is in the audience there. Hiya. So they're here for Christo, not for me, because this book, Mandela, My Prisoner, My Friend, isn't mine, it's Christo's book. And I was telling that. It was just my privilege to put it together for him. The book will take you right there to the bleak wastes of Robben Island, a place of lost souls, a place I don't like at all, but in fact Christo still works there, goes there every day, and runs the bookshop and the tourist cafe there. So, you know, he has to love it. This book will take you right into Nelson Mandela's prison cell. And you might think that you've read millions of words about Mandela, but this is the man as you've never seen him before. I met Christo last year when Mandela was very ill and we thought he would die soon. We spent about 20 minutes together on a cold, blustery afternoon when he just got off the ferry from Robben Island. And he told me about his time guarding Mandela, and I realised that I could listen to his stories for hours. So thanks to John Blake and Rosie, I now have listened to him for hours. Christo would come to my home every Saturday and Sunday for weeks on end and recreate for me the extraordinary events of his life alongside Nelson Mandela. We all know that Mandela spent 27 years in prison. We all know that he was with other brave men, also prepared to die to end apartheid's cruelty against black people. And we think of them on Robben Island in desperate hardship, rarely seeing their family, every word written or spoken overheard and taped by the paranoid system, their visits denied or cut short, and their letters censored into shreds. But what we don't know is the richness of their lives in prison, the comradeship, the bonds of friendship, the nobility of overcoming suffering. And Christo takes us there, and through him we see Mandela's life stripped down to small moments of humanity. Mandela himself wrote his long walk to freedom on Robben Island, and he wanted Christo too to write about those days through the eyes of a white Afrikaans man who was part of the regime which imprisoned him. In the book, we walk with Christo down the dusty track from the maximum prison to the visitors section. Christo, armed, walks a few paces behind Mandela. Dog handlers on either side of them. And then we stop, as Mandela picks a tiny Namakala daisy, one of the only flowers to bloom on Robben Island. He takes it to the visiting booth, and he places it where Winnie can see it. They can't touch, and she can't pick up the daisy. But it's a small moment of humanity that we never knew about before, and there are many others. We walk with Christo through a busy shopping street in Cape Town on a visit to the doctor. Mandela is in leg chains, Christo in uniform, armed with a handgun. No one can recognise Mandela. Images of him have been banned by law. No one has seen him for 20 years. A black street vendor sees the prisoner and comes over to give him an hug. Another small moment of humanity. And the book is full of such moments. It was a joy and an inspiration for me to write it, and I hope it will be a joy and an inspiration for you to read it. I'm just going to read you a little chapter, a little bit of a little chapter, before I hand over to Christo and Zindzi. Okay, this is also about a trip to the doctor. By now, Mandela has been moved off Robben Island, where he spent 18 years, and he now is in Pollsmoor prison on the mainland. But he has to have these regular checkups. And there were always fears that Mandela could escape en route to hospital appointments. So he had to have annual medical checkups, as well as regular eye tests and visits to an ear, nose and throat specialist. No one was going to neglect Mandela's health. Pro-apartheid supporters were saying openly that the only thing worse than a free Mandela would be a dead Mandela. Better to take care of his health than have him die a martyr. When he had checkups, it was always a discreet appointment. He would be the last patient to be booked in, so there could be no contact with the public. The specialist clinic on the 5th floor of a modern office block near the foreshore in Cape Town was already closed when we got there. This is Christo talking. We had arranged for him to stay late to see Mandela. The doctor spent an hour and a half with him, checking blood pressure and doing cardiac and breathing tests. I was in the examination room with him, armed with a handgun. The other warders were outside carrying machine guns. There was a view of the harbour from a big picture window. It was dark by now, and the view was lit up with the twinkling lights of anchored ships. When we left, we started back towards Pollsmoor prison along Beach Road, a different direction to the way we had come. We were in a convoy with a police escort. It was about 8 p.m. and quite dark when I drew the minibus into a gravel parking place next to the ocean. The other warders wanted a smoke break. I told Mandela we could get out and walk down to the sea. He looked across to Robben Island and he said, "What's that place out there?" And I said, "It's your old prison." He was completely taken aback. "No," he said, "it can't be, it looks like maybe a small town or a big ship moored out there." The island was dark at night. The street lights were switched off, and there was just the single beam from the lighthouse blinking on and off. He wouldn't believe me. All you could see of Robben Island was its looming black shape. Mandela was certain the water was a river, but I told him to listen to the waves. I took him across a few rocks, strewn with the huge strands of seaweed he spent years working with, and told him to dip his hand in the water. "You see, it's salty, it's the Atlantic," I said. We stood there for about 5 minutes. Mandela was overawed by the sound and smell of the ocean and the huge sky. He stood there, staring around him and up at the stars. And he said, "You know, Mr. Brand, I've never been out this late before." So look, that's my it. I want to hand you over to Christo and Zindzi now, because they've been friends ever since Zindzi first began to be allowed to visit her father on Robben Island. Prisoners were not allowed to see or hear children under 16, but Zindzi at the age of 15 lied about her age, and she started to visit her father. So I wanted her to tell us about when she first met Christo. But also, there's two very special things about Zindzi. She's the, well, there's more than two special things, but in relation to this book and the stories that I tell in this book, Zindzi is the mother of the baby that was smuggled onto Robben Island by her mother, Winnie, and shown to Mandela by Christo. You might know about this story where Winnie wraps this tiny baby in a blanket and smuggles the baby onto Robben Island, and then nobody knows what to do. And Christo says that she can't show the baby to Mandela, but you'll hear that he finds a way. So that was Zaleka, who was the tiny 4-month-old baby daughter of Zindzi. And there's another very nice link too. Zindzi told me once about her father being released from prison and coming home and begging her to stop breastfeeding her baby son so that he could have the boy in the bedroom with him at night and he could feed him from a bottle and change him because he'd missed his children so much while he was in prison. And that baby is now 26 and he's here. So there's some very nice links. So now you two must talk for us, please. Tell us things that you want to tell us about when you first set eyes on Christo.
Yeah, it was, always difficult going to visit my father in prison. It was never easy because even those many years ago, there was always some kind of glass partition, between us. And on either side at the time, there'd be 3 prison warders this side and 3 prison warders this side. And our conversation was heavily censored. And these people were, in doing their jobs, were not very warm and didn't even respond, positively to young children. But then we met Christo, and I'll never forget, the first time I met Christo, he was just so different because I could sense the emotion. He was emotional, he was very polite, he was warm, and I could see him holding back the tears. And I've never ever asked him why and what he was thinking and what was going through his head at the time. But then the relationship grew from there. I was one of the last people to even know about my baby being smuggled into Tata, there for Tata to hug and kiss him because it had to be highly secret. Your job was at risk, obviously. But there were always these beautiful gestures between Tata and Christo. And my own analysis, I'm not a historian or anthropologist or anything, but my father being a traditional man who grew up in the village of Kunu, who had a great sense of authority, hierarchy, discipline, respect, irrespective of this lovely, sweet old man everybody saw out there, trust me, and told me it was another story. So he, within this background, and Christo also coming from a pretty conservative background, also from the rural areas and so on, I think it was just so easy for your relationship to take off because you had so many values in common. And in many ways, Christo, he regarded you as a son, you know that. And I remember when we did the 21st anniversary of Dada's release, please, one confession, I talk too much, so at some stage, so I really have time to keep at some stage, somebody we did the 21st anniversary of my father's release from prison. And obviously Christo had to be there because we wanted everybody who was involved in the build-up to his release to be there. Everybody who was a part of his life had to be there and so on. And my dad at this stage was very much into his afternoon naps. As you remember, he'd have his lunch and have a nap, and that was it, and we'd all party after, a get-together. But on this occasion, because Christo was there, my father refused to go into the house and he refused to go to sleep. And he just sat there hanging on Christo's every word until 8 p.m. And then eventually even said you must bring him into the house. It was again, water, take me to myself. It was the same. He was so, your relationship was so comfortable, so beautiful. And I think it's such an important lesson for us to learn now and to hold on to now with all the challenges that we face in terms of reconciliation, love, that you are a perfect example of how it is possible for love to triumph over everything, for respect to triumph over everything. You executed your job like you were just very loyal. You were a loyal warder under the apartheid system. You were about service. Tata himself was also about service and loyalty, and you had that in common. But you actually took it a step further, and you're just a perfect example of humanity between two people from completely opposite sides of the spectrum who are able to say, you know what, this is how the human spirit triumphs over adversity. And our children need to hear more of this, and thank you, Barbara, for helping Christo tell his story. I think the timing couldn't be more perfect.
You know, Mandela was always fighting in prison for studies. He was fighting with me, I must study. Mark of the letter to my wife for I must study further. But he will also fight with his daughter, Zindzi. I was a middleman, you must take the letters, I must take it to university, I must take it there, and all these things to get her studies. And like she said, it was hunger for children. She didn't know that he'd take a criminal prisoner out of prison and take it as his child outside. You know that one? There was one day, I was working late night shift, and then I locked up prisoners, and then I see this boy about 8 years old in prison, which I was locked up. I looked out for the juveniles one side, sentenced prisoners one side, and so on. And I put this juvenile in a single cell. And the next morning, I take him out. Mandela was isolation, was during the negotiation process. I take this boy with me, I call it a mixed race cell, take him with me to Mandela's cell. And he said, oh, you bring me a visitor. I said, no, it's a child. He said, he's a child. I said, no, it's not a visitor, he's a prisoner. He said, what do you mean? I asked the prisoner, give me your prison ticket. Mandela read in Afrikaans, murder, moord. He said, no, that child can't be in for murder. I said, yes, he's locked up. And now the boy must explain to Mandela what happened. He explained that it's in a gangster area where he grew up. Then the gangsters hold his mother and father, and they give a gun for this boy. He must go and shoot the other person. Must knock on the door. When they open, they see this child, they won't see. Then they shot the person dead. And then the child was arrested for murder. And then Mandela said, no, Mr. Brand, this child can't sleep tonight in this prison. Phone Dalla Omar. He was Mandela's one of his lawyers. So I phoned Dalla Omar. Immediately Dalla made arrangements. Mandela insisted that this boy must be taken out of prison. So Dalla made arrangement where the boy was put under special care. Not with the family again, because there will be problems, but put him out some care. That's what Mandela was doing for children. You know, you've seen it in prison. Even my own son, I smuggled to Mandela to prison. I take him to this, and you know, he was so fond. Then later my son gave him chocolates and things, and when he became big, he was even give him a scholarship. I take him to his house when he was president at that stage, give him a scholarship. He wanted him to study further, and then it was the way of he wanted people to study. He wanted to encourage. Even I was the enemy of them, he would also look his enemy to study. Even not only me, but also other prisoners were encouraged for further studies. So he was very pressurized for studies. That was Mandela. Always disciplined, studies, and you must look after your family. He said to me later to my wife, I'm not a good husband if I can't look after her, if I don't study properly. When I must study. Yeah. One of the things what happened, Zindzi came to Robben Island. I remember the years when she came there. We always put her in a waiting room. The visit was very strict. It was monitored by tape recorder because security branch wanted to listen what the prisoners and the visitors is talking. If she should have talked anything which we don't like, the microphones were switched off. Visit was stopped. We gave her a warning. Mandela will tell her daughter, no, please, just keep to family relations, businesses. Then after that, the visit will carry on. If she talked again about something going wrong outside, the visit was cut and stopped. She was being sent back. There was occasions when she came to Robben Island, to the mainland, and then not to the, she was still on the mainland to get a ferry to Robben Island. Then we get instructions from security branch. She already talked to some people outside. She's visiting Robben Island. We stopped the visit. She's not allowed to come over to Robben Island. Everything was just stopped there. Then it was also for me sorry, feel for me very bad because I informed Mandela already the Friday that you have a visit Saturday morning. And he looking forward. He was already dressed up. He already geared for this visit. He prepared himself. And then she don't turn up. Then it was time when we fight with her, with the visits. I still have a tape where they fight. If she came there, she came without a notebook. he will ask you, where's your notebook? Because the instructions I gave her, she must note it down. He want to know, she mustn't forget, because he said she's young, she will leave this prison, she totally forget about what her father said to her, she must do it outside. He want a notebook.
15 when I saw him for the first time, and as a grown woman with 3 children when he came back home. And there's so much, there was this journey of mutual discovery that we still had to embark on, and we just never had enough time. And especially now, sorry, is it?
That's okay, you just hold it slightly further away from it.
Okay, and especially now with Dada having left us, I cherish all these stories, Christo, and I think, you know, with our families being this close, I think we need to be even closer. I think the grandchildren like Bambata need to know from you, like those stories. We all, by the way, haven't been to Robben Island ever since Tata was there. It's just very difficult for us to, we wanted to go there with him to confront our goals together, but the opportunity never came. But I think it's so important because they are like, I've known you all these years, and sometimes, like even when we're all sitting together last night, you'd come up with stories like that. We're like, I don't know this one. And I think even for Barbara, who's written the book, you're also constantly discovering.
Sorry.
You're on
Not
stage.
If you could turn that one off.
But I'm very loud. As I was saying. Sorry. But I mean, I just think it's such a treasure to have people like Christo to help us document our stories, honestly, because Tata used to always say every South African has a story to tell.
Yes.
He would always, you know, stress that, like you relate a story, says, have you written this down? Every South African has a story to tell, and I hope you're just going to set a beautiful example, Christo, and inspire younger people as well to talk to their parents. And thanks, by the way, Estelle, this couldn't have happened without you. Even for you in the difficult circumstances, being married to Christo and him working like under such a harsh system, and for you to have been able as well to be that brave. Here he was looking after a so-called terrorist, anything could have happened to him, but for you to have just been the bigger person, willing to take the risk, and actually saying, you know, for love, you need, there has to be courage. So thank you for also sharing him with us.
And just something at the end to finalize. You know, in prison one day Mandela was allowed to buy Christmas cake over Christmas time. We bought this cake from Shoprite Checkers or one place, but a small piece of cake. And one day he offered me a piece of the cake, and he made, Sisulu made a coffee. I must drink a coffee with him. It's Christmas. I just came from lunch, he said, okay, and eat the cake. And then I said, Mandela, yo, this is the baddest cake I've ever eaten. This cake is very dry. Let me rather bring you tomorrow cake. The next day, my wife was baking fruit cakes, which always dipped with brandy and white well soaked. So I take him a piece of the cake. He was really fond of this cake. The year after that, not even a year, a few months later, somebody's birthday, was his birthday in July. He said, Brad, I want that fruit cake for my birthday. Can you organize? So I said, okay. So I get a receipt from some shop as if I bought something there as a fruit cake, because everything must be withdrawn from his property, his money. Everything must be recorded that I bought fruit cake for Mandela's birthday. So my wife was baking the fruit cake, and I just take that receipt with for the fruit cake. Then after that, on every Christmas, not only Mandela, but Sisulu and all of them want fruit cakes. They buy seeds for them. At the moment, it's only Katrara still receives fruit cakes. Yes.
Cycle the receipts.
Yes.
But Zindzi, were you aware when they were in Portsmouth prison that what was going on the rooftop there? You know, the high command of the ANC had been removed from Robben Island because actually the government thought they were having too much influence over new prisoners. So they removed those 4 to Portsmouth prison. And then they set up this, none of the criminal prisoners knew or were allowed to talk to them, and no, Christo wasn't allowed even to mention their names to anybody, it was all secret. So they're up there on the top floor of the prison, and the Red Cross had sent them tennis equipment and table tennis equipment and games of Monopoly, and they were like having, they were playing tennis, and you'd have Mandela playing with, your father playing with I came with one of the others, and Christo, you know, so hot up there, strips the top of his uniform off, and the prisoners are in their singlets, and the keys are just lying around anywhere on the because no one even wants to escape. And then Mandela was so big, and he's got these long arms, he's just, you know, batting things back. And Christo is running around working up the sweat, and of course, if the commander of the prison or one of the senior officers came, they had the whole system of, you know, and then just to put his jacket back on, his hat, do up the 3 buttons, and everybody, and of course, the senior officer would also be sweating soon because it was so hot up there. But then while all that was going on, Christo said in those days he really looked forward to his shift, you know. He looked forward to going to work because it was kind of, it was fun, you know, they were studying, they had decent food at last. And, you know, meantime, outside in the country, you know, just miles away, Cape Town, there were riots and, you know, police using tear gas, students rioting, and I mean, life was dangerous. And were you aware of that?
Well, I mean, about the tennis and like the changed atmosphere that they encountered at Portsmouth.
Well, also that they were so frustrated. I mean, yes, they enjoyed their tennis and your father had a little garden again, and you know, they kind of made a life that was almost bearable. But outside, you know, the cause that they were inside for, already been inside for more than 20 years, they were not able to contribute. I mean, they were so frustrated in there.
I think the contribution comes in the sacrifice that they made. And go back to me and say, why didn't you tell me? I hear such and such. Oh yes, by the way, do you understand? Because so much, you know, if you think about this 27 years where like you were restricted to seeing him maybe only twice a month, at first for about 30 minutes and later for 40 minutes, you still lose a lot of you lose a lot of your history. Whether like it's in separation or together, you lose a lot of it. And which is why, like during his lifetime, I always said I'm not gonna read a single book of yours that say it's gonna be from your lips to my ear. You're right here with me, and I treasure every moment, and this, you know, it's important to me that I hear from you. One day, God forbid, when you're no longer with us, then I will begin to read and catch up on these other aspects of yourself that you never told me about.
You know? I did mean to say that when they were having this life on the rooftop, it was helpful for them not to be able to know, really, you know, by word of mouth, what was going on outside, and not be able to do anything, but all the time trying through the lawyers to get messages out.
No, they would get messages from us.
Yeah.
Because we learned how to speak in coded language. Like where you knew if you're talking about Auntie Angie's, possibly ANC, you know, I mean, we developed like some kind of code. And we're also able to get messages back from them, like when Christo was talking earlier on about the notebook and the frustration of it. By the way, I found one of them, and I think the Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO is here. Has he arrived? Silo, there he is. There's going to very see. That's Silo is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation Center of Memory. And I told him that I found one of those notebooks, Christo, where like I just thought, Lord, I was so secretarial, I cannot believe it. I mean, it was like pages and pages from this visit and the other, and Silo says I must surrender it to the foundation. That's another discussion. But the thing is, we're able to come back from Robben Island, from Portsmouth, from Victor Verster, and still come back and give activists hope to say they have heard, the leadership has heard, and this is what the leadership advises. So they could never like actually break that bond effectively.
Because they were still working as hard as they could, but to know that the people were, you know, suffering like that. And then your father was put into isolation. So that, you know, when Christo was talking about that small boy being brought in for murder, I mean, at that time, your father was in isolation by now. So, you know, he lost all his comrades. There's no more table tennis, no garden. He's in that dark, dank cell. And then he's starting very gradually to negotiate, you know, with the hated, you know, oppressors. And not always with the cooperation of everybody, you know, of his lawyers and his comrades. So he was so alone and had so much on his shoulders, and yet he still found time to sort out this small child. That's what's so touch it. And of course, it was in those days that he began to get TV, in fact, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, like, having said all of that, it was very interesting how he would often say, like, after his release, that he misses being in prison at times. And at first we get extremely offended, like, what is this supposed to mean? We are here as family. And he'd say, no, because I often had time to contemplate and meditate. And I found that I made fewer mistakes. I didn't rush my decisions. He used to often say that. So he always saw, he just had this ability to turn a negative into a positive. I mean, the mere fact is though that the first home that he built in the Eastern Cape was a duplication of the prison house.
Yeah.
Which we thought was just so bizarre. What a idea. Honestly, you know, it was just short of like going through the gate and going like, hi Christo, hi Mr. Swart, whatever. Honestly, it's an exact duplication. I mean, Christo will tell you, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's an exact duplication of the house. But then we tried to make sense of it and process it and say, maybe this was his first encounter with subnormal. Like being psychologically prepared to go out. So it was his first taste of what normal was and that he'd forgotten about. But for us, honestly, it was very, very strange.
You know, Zindzi, something that you don't tell people about, but everybody knows about, is when your father was given, I think, his 6th chance of release. You know, 6 times they offered him instant release if he would renounce the opposition to the government and kind of renounce the MK and the NC. And he would not. And of course, he couldn't give his reasons why not. There was Botha on television, you know, denouncing Mandela, you know, he's bringing this on himself and he could help himself and, you know, terrible things. And he couldn't say anything. And your mother was a banned person, so she was out in some dreadful France place where she was under curfew and couldn't even travel. And so you, aged 25, you had to go and address this packed football stadium in Soweto and read out that fantastic speech of your father's. And you did it really, really well. You must remember that. Weren't you carried sort of shoulder high out of the stadium at the end?
Yeah, and some guys groped me in the process. But anyhow, I think it was one of those very bittersweet moments, you know, in my life. Because
what a speech, wasn't it?
It was an incredible speech, and it was like, from the heart, like he felt very strongly about this, that he wouldn't be compromised, that he wouldn't sacrifice all these years and come out and compromise his entire legacy, what he stood for.
But he also said, how can I be free when
but the freedom of my people cannot be.
Yeah?
Yes.
But I just want to say something there, you know, when they offered in 1984 this freedom, which he didn't accept, then after that they sent me to him to talk to him about this, must accept. I was bugged. And you know, they put bugs on me, they sit in the office, all of them listen, because they want to report to the PW Botha's office what they're going to do. Now I walked in with a fear, because if I walked in, he will always greet me friendly, will ask me if you want a coffee, or if you want to play table tennis, or whatever. Now I must try to convince him to stop doing it. When he walked in the gate, I show him, he was quiet. I show him even the bug, but yeah, I explained to him, show him that, then he clicked immediately, and then I said, Luke said, good afternoon, Mandela. He said, oh, Mr. Brandt, welcome, welcome. And you know, now we must be careful and back. Show him the batteries even from the back. Then I said, how's the garden doing? No, fine, fine. I said, and your studies, are you prepared for the exams? No, I'm prepared. I said, what do you say about this offer which PW Botha offer you? Then you know what to answer. He said he will never sacrifice, he will never accept that, and the whole story. That same evening on the TV, PW Botha made announcements that he will never give in on Mandela. You know, and that was from the incident where I go to him and get the message, and that's where Mandela's feeling was. And I also was worried in the middle. I was in the middle of these 2 things now.
Oh, wow. You see, again, Christo always. How many times, you see, we've never even spoken about that you and I before, about that the offer of conditional release and so on. But, and it means, like, and you're telling us just how determined they were.
Yes.
Just how determined they were, like, to break him and to...
You know, there was the incident where we bring him from Volks Hospital after a prostate operation. Then we put him in isolation. That isolation was a dampness cell, it was not well ventilation, there was no sunlight in the cell. But they made it comfortable for him, give him a TV and a proper bed and pillows and everything. And even log of water at night with him. You know, if something happens, the water is there. But then your mother was fighting at the visit. She will take it further outside and fight the government. Why they isolate you alone and take you away from Zulus and then he said, no, no, darling, the more you fight, the more they put me deeper underground to this prison. He was saying they will put more pressure to me. But in the meantime, negotiations was start coming on track. But he was in a bad space. Yes?
Should we open it?
Any questions?
We should open up to, because we have these chats all the time. We even forget that you guys are here. So then we should allow people to ask.
Yeah, my name is Lars, I'm Norwegian, and when I was a student in Norway many years ago, I was a host for 3 days for a British journalist called Anthony Sampson who came to our university. And of course this was in 1985, and of course he talked about Mandela. I must admit I was fairly ignorant about the whole thing, but other students were very sort of clear about Free Nelson Mandela. And that being said, so my question is sort of to you, two things. Is you as a South African working in the prison service, were you aware of how people all over the world were sort of engaged and concerned about it? And second question, Mr. Mandela himself, did he know that there were people all over the world asking for his release?
You know what I can mention there, in the year when Mandela turned 70, when he was first 60, there was a demand from the outside world. Like I said, thousands and thousands of postcards come from all over the world. But from South Africa was only a few. And out of that, thousands, about 50,000 were on postcards which came for his birthday. He was only received 6 from his direct family. He's 1 from his lawyers, 1 from his wife, and I think from the children, but only 6 from his direct family. So strict was it. And on his 70th birthday, there was a thing happened in the UK, a big ceremony, the 70th birthday ceremony. And that was recorded into 3 tapes. That was the DHH tapes, about 11 hours. Then Mandela was not allowed to see this at all. So they made a shorter version. Mr. Adala Omar, his lawyer, bring to the prison. The head of the prison looked through it. He said, no, approved, leave Mandela. I swapped the shortened version and I gave him the low 11 hours. So I said we can have one at night, every night. Every night I take the one off back and put another one there. So I've seen it. He has known the world outside was knowing him. There was a demand from the outside. Even in 1978, they only found out there was an uprising in 1976 in South Africa. And when the young ones came in, then they knew about it. The people, the ANC didn't die out when he came to prison. It's still alive outside. People are still fighting the struggle. And he was feeling strong inside. And that's why he said he renounced not to take this offer, because he sat so many years in prison fighting for the freedom of the people. He can't accept now. He'd rather die in prison than accept it at that stage.
Christo, isn't it? You were also saying in the book about when you discovered these boxes and boxes of birthday cards, and then years later you felt so bad because they came from everywhere. Like some universities would have every individual student who wanted to, which would be thousands. They would send a birthday card each. So, like I think the University of Michigan, every student sent a birthday card. So the boxes and boxes were just lying around, and in the end they put them on the incinerator. And then years later, Christo told me he felt so bad about this, that on his 60th birthday, his father got, 6 cards, and actually the whole world was thinking of it. And so he told him, did you know that, actually I meant to tell you. He said, oh, I'm still bad, I know. He said, like, the other prisoners who were going out and playing football or whatever on the island, they would find these charred bits, and they brought them to him, of course. So he knew everything.
I'm going to stick my whole in and ask Zindzi a question if I can. Politics aside, he was your daddy. How often did you really, really get to see him from when you went to go visit him? Was it twice a month?
Yeah, it was twice a month, and we'd have to rotate.
So you
because we couldn't have more than 2 visitors at a time. Yeah. So we'd all have to take turns. But I used to tease him when he was present and say, at least I was guaranteed seeing you twice a month. now you're all over the world. Exactly. Yeah, so it was very limited. So, you learn to appreciate time
that you have
and the value of every moment, like from the earliest time. You also learn to appreciate the power of the written word. because that's, like there was an extended form of your communication, so letters mattered a lot, and they were very precious and sacred. And even those 30-minute visits, 40-minute visits, at some stage, just seemed like you'd been there for a longer time.
It must have been really hard growing up without actually having your dad there, as in tactile. What would you say is the most funniest but important lesson he ever taught you? Just like a little ditty, dad to daughter ditty.
I think, let me think. One of the things that first struck me about my father, when I actually looked at him, and I was with him as a father, and we're traveling together on a state visit to the US. And he was doing his usual walkabout, and there's a woman who, when she touched his hand, became very emotional. She cried, she nearly passed out, and so on. And then he was very quiet as we got back in the car, and we drove back to the residence where we were staying. He was very quiet. And he acted in silence, and I wanted to know from him, what's on your mind that's disturbing you? And he just said, darling, that woman, did you see how emotional she was? I wonder why. So it never occurred to him the impact he had. I mean, on people. He never saw himself as that in isolation. I mean, where have you ever heard of a man who's separating from his wife, but he still says, my colleagues and I? It was never just him, do you understand? He never saw himself as it. He never thought of himself as great. He just thought he was a product of a great organization, and he came from this great culture of comradeship and struggle. That's how he saw himself.
How did you feel?
So it's the humility that really struck me.
Yeah. How did it feel the first time you got to put your arms around your dad? That must have been amazing.
Even before I put my arms around him, I used to always wonder how tall he was. Because every time we got to, they'd be seated. Oh, yeah. Every time we got it was deliberate. I'm sure it was a psychological thing. Well, I shall see Shorty now. He'd be seated. And then we'd have to leave and leave him seated. So I never knew how tall he was, and it was so important to me to know how tall he was, and just to see his frame. So for me, I do remember there was one time where there was an element of carelessness where he came at first, and I wouldn't move. I just wouldn't move because I wanted to see him, his height, and just to see his gait and how he carries himself as he walked out of the room, and I was so excited. I was really so excited. It was such a beautiful gift to me.
Your first visit to him was not contact visits on Robben Island.
Yeah, it was no contact visits.
Only after 83.
Yeah, it was only when you got to, was it, yeah. Yes. That means from the 60s.
She used to come on Sunday afternoons with Matanzima's daughter, the two of them, because she was studying. And then they visited.
To UCT.
There was a lot of these occasions because things become relaxed, and the security branch, we must report to them every visit. When she came with this lady, I never reported this lady. I just did the first visit for 40 minutes, and then I said, okay, go sit another half an hour. We gave him some extra time, and then I made it forget about that to report it on Monday. If you see they didn't ask anything about visits on the Wednesday, I don't report it at all, so I keep it quiet. So I assist him on that, and he warned me one day, he said, Mr. Brandt, you must be careful. I don't want to put your job at risk. So he was always trying to protect me during that time.
Which is my question. Your story is amazing, and we hear all these wonderful things that you've done, and I'm just wondering, the things that you do, is that you, the man? Is that Christo Brandt, who that's just how you think, that's how you behave, and you're for the good? Or was there a trigger, was there a catalyst that changed you and made you into this man that we now know?
Like I said, where I grew up, on the farm with African children, play with him, where he was disrespectful to an elderly man one day where I get hiding. My father said to himself, that person can be black, but his skin color can't come off when you touch him. We can be friends. He's a human being like us. We think the same. We was also very poor on the farm as white people. And I grew up with African people to respect them, especially for their age. Young ones was fighting and throwing stones and whatever, but with the elderly people, I respect. Sorry, when I arrived in Robben Island, I was 18 years old, Mandela was 60. And then this respect came to my head and said, I must respect this. He's a prisoner. They first tell me he's a criminal. I don't see tattoos on their faces. And the respect Mandela gave me as his senior. I was 18 years old, but he respected me as his senior person. The way he talked to me on occasions. Then I have this respect towards him. And that's what, there was no change on that. But also I start feeling sorry for them. There were so many years in prison. I said to myself, this guys must be released. I don't know, they waste the time of the prison authority to still be here. He's innocent, let him go out and we released him. But still, there was a struggle up on the outside. Yeah. The government don't want to release. Then I was thinking also where I grew up, why there must be the apartheid? Why must be the apartheid things out there? Why the government can't change? Then I was so happy when we take him for the first time out for negotiation process at night, we could see. And I said, Mandela, you know, especially first when he was transferred from Robben Island, I said to him, he asked President Brand, where are we going to? We were not informed to tell him Paulsville prison. We said Brandvlei prison. So he wrote his letters first from Brandvlei prison. Only after a month it changed to Paulsville prison. Then he asked me what's the reason they transferred. I said, only transferred prisoner when they will release them soon. You know, that scene only came 12 years later.
Relative.
So, only 12 years later, and even with the negotiation process, I always tell him, Mandela, I'm thinking, talk your way out. And I was happy with this process happening.
But do you remember also, you used to say to him when he was like sending off his little postal orders and things to pay for study material, and you would say to him, look, you guys are old already, you have life imprisonment, you know, for a political prisoner that meant life, there wouldn't have been no parole or anything like that. So why are you wasting time like that? You know, this is your life now, you must just, no, he said, Mr. Mandela, no, study is everything. He got them all studying. And then he was very smart because he decided to learn Afrikaans. This is the language of his oppressor. Because he's going to get out one day, much as Christo didn't believe that. He's going to get out one day and it's going to be really important to talk to them in their own language. And he was studying Afrikaans and he wasn't really a great student. He admitted himself that he found it hard, you know. Anyway, he was doing quite well and he got Christo to talk to him in Afrikaans, only in Afrikaans. So he could do his oral thing. And then he got, one day got this assignment to do an essay, My Day on the Beach. So, of course, you know, so, at the same time when Christo's telling me this, you didn't even, I think, you know, he says, okay, so he writes about his day on the beach, which was, you know, by then they'd stopped hacking the rocks in the lime quarries, but now they're pulling this giant seaweed stuff out of the sea. And they're chopping it up, they're hanging out to dry and they chop it up and it's sold as fertilizer or something. It's hard work, you know, it's hard labour. And so he writes about stay on the beach doing that. And then the rocks are really sharp, so he gashes his foot and talks about that. So I was thinking, okay, this is his day on the beach. I said to Christo, so what did you say? He said, oh no, I gave it back to him. He had to rewrite it, it was too long.
It's like,
about my day on the beach, you know. But I'm sure the irony wasn't lost on your father, you know. And of course, the people who were marking the essays, they would.
He was communicating less and less responsive, and President Obama was coming to the country. I think my father was also like very selective, even in his illness, like, oh, here they come again, saying you look well, whatever, silent, honestly. He chose what he responded to. So just before President Obama came, I actually told him, and I said, you know, I was playing with his hair, holding his hand, I'm saying, Tata, President Obama is coming, and his eyes just shot open, and he had the hugest smile, and then quickly like went back to sleep again. So obviously, I mean, if he responded like that, he had great admiration for him.
But Obama was quite very respectful, wasn't he?
He was. He didn't even ask. Yes. But he just asked to see the family.
Yes, he
but he went to Robben Island and he wrote very nice.
It was 2 occasions on Robben Island. When he was senator and yeah,
and first time. And you've got a passage like this is in your book, yes. Like where
well, he writes about, you know, all the brave souls who, you know, suffered Robben Island.
Christo, I'm intrigued about you almost having to play a role as a spy, as a prison. Were there occasions where you were in what you considered real physical danger, either from the regime or from jealous inmates? You know, what was your worst experience?
My worst experience with, You said my worst experience with Mandela?
No, whether you were scared.
Whether you were scared, you know, at what point were you most scared of stepping on the wrong toes above you, say?
You know, that was one occasion we was called in by generals from our head office. They came to visit Portsmouth. They visited the section where Mandela was being kept. And then they called in Mr. Smuts, who was working with me first, for an interview if he can work with those prisoners. They asked Mr. Smuts, what do you think of Nelson Mandela? He said, no man, that is a man who stand up for his people. He should have led the country with his people. And they was very upset. They chased him out of the office and he was even transferred away. He told me when he came in the passage while they still have a discussion what happened to him, how they scream on him and everything. He told me that. And I was thinking to walk in. And when he asked me the same question, I said, man, this man should have been hanged. He's wasting our time. And you should have not been in prison. And then he was very happy with the answer I gave him. I gave him an answer what they want to hear, not what I feel at that stage. I tell him that answer. And so I was very happy. And so I was staying on till the end with him, Mr. Mandela. And there was things which I done for him which I sometimes worry if it leaked out or things can happen, because Mandela also said, Mr. Brown, you're taking a risk. You must be careful. Because if I was caught for things I done for him, favors, I should have also been charged for treason, smuggled with a terrorist, they called it that time, and I should have been also in trouble. But what I've done, I always look for alternative ways. If I must contact maybe one of his family members or somebody urgent, I don't phone from my house. And if it's possible, I phone from a telephone booth. Then I will phone somebody else, which a lawyer put me to a lady, Khadija Valley. I will phone her and just explain briefly, not say who's talking on the other side. She will take the action further from that side. Even his study material, she was organizing. I just phoned her, I need this, that's all. Don't say who need it or what people need it. She will just deliver to Portsmouth.
But were other warders aware of any of that? Was there anybody on that side who trusted you the same way as Mandela?
On Robben Island, I catch out some warders, which was very offensive to some of the prisoners, swearing at them, just hit him from the back and everything. Then I'm thinking that was unnecessary to do this. But one day I caught out this warder, where they eating together, he give him a newspaper and they was friends. But he just do it in front of us, they could not know their relationship. You know, but the warders, on Portsmouth I was become a warrant officer already, in charge of the section. I was in charge of doing certain instructions. Nobody could have gone, pinned me behind my back, I was in charge of them. So I have a superior over me, but nobody will run straight to superior, then he will be charged. So I was also covered in some way.
There's a question over here, Dr. Rathers.
Me, it was answered actually. I was fascinated by the fellow warders and how their treatment towards you would be. And but I think it was
you know, also after Mandela's release, one of the heads of the prison stopped one day there in the holiday place. He said to me, "How's it with your cover booty?" Like a swear word. I said, "No, Mandela is still fine, he's all right." He said, "Okay, that's all I want to hear." And they always, now after that, some of them which didn't like him at that time, they just greet me in a way they didn't want to react with me. But some came back to me and said, no, we was wrong during that years. We should have think and done what you have done. You know, there's some of them come back.
But at the time, that's afterwards. But at the time, you were sounds like you were so different. You were in such a different place to where they probably were. There was no personal antagonism, or it must have been very difficult at that time.
It was difficult, yes.
But not just for you, but for your family as well, maybe.
For my family as well. But you know, in prison, things which happened there between me and Mandela and Sisulu, when we take him out for escort, whatever. Sometimes we take him out, we must be dressed in private clothes. My wife said, "Where are we going?" I said, "No, we're just going out today with a prisoner." I didn't even mention to her we take Mandela out. On a Sunday, we want to go out. I said, "No, I've got an assignment, I must be at prison." Then I take Mandela out for negotiations during that time. Because I never talk about my work at home. I keep it away from my home. Because I was afraid maybe she just mentioned something to somebody, it can leak out, then I'm in trouble. So we keep the work, and at home you just be with your family and your children, and that's all. It was difficult.
But I think Mandela knew what you were doing for him and how much it meant. And when he was released, quite soon afterwards, he he called you, didn't he, and said,
You know-
look, you know, we're all out. This is all the political prisoners who are now out. He said, we're all out of prison, but you're still inside. You know, we have to
And he's still there.
So then he found him a job in the government, working on the Constitutional Assembly.
That's correct.
And when you remember that when the Constitutional Assembly, it goes through this whole process for 2 years, and finally the new Constitution of South Africa is the most important possible document. Christo is actually carrying the finished documents down the corridor in Parliament. Of course, Mr. Mandela sees his old friend, come into my office. He says, no, I've got these documents to deliver. And then he signed one for you. So Christo was the first person to ever have, you know, signed copy of the Constitution of South Africa.
And you know, then I said to him, I'm going to bribe him with this document. Because I've got the document signed by you, nobody can do some changes. But after that, there was some changes. He signed that interim, that constitution which he adopted. I said, now I'm going to bribe you with this. He was just laughing, say nothing.
We should wrap up, shouldn't we? So how about you say some closing words? I don't know, is there any more, does anyone else want to? We've done the whole book now.
Christo, when you look at the current batch of leaders in South Africa, there's been some disappointment in the quality of leadership in South Africa since Mr. Mandela stepped aside. When you look at the current batch of leaders there, who is the man or woman who you would point to, who in your mind you would say would genuinely follow in Nelson Mandela's footsteps? For the sheer quality of leadership.
Okay.
Is there one person that stands out for you?
Sorry?
Is there one person who stands out for you?
Yes, there is one person stand up. For me personally, the person which I think which can lead the country. Mandela put the footsteps, he put the foundation, he put his legacy behind what he wants for the country. But in my mind, I think the person which is Cyril Ramaphosa, I think is very strong because he was, through him, with Leon Wessels and all these people, he get the constitution being adopted in a very fair way to accommodate everybody in South Africa. Halima Maglantu is also good, but I think Cyril Ramaphosa, he was a little bit young at that stage, but I think he can lead, I'm sure.
But these were all your prisoners as well, weren't they?
Everywhere
we go. Everywhere we go, you know, when Obama came, on your father's 95th birthday, came to visit, I said, you know, it'd be good if we could contact him or somehow, you know, because we were just in the throes of finishing the book. So I said, oh, I don't know how we could, you know, maybe we could contact his people. So then I found, you know, the South African ambassador to Washington was with him, and it was Ibrahim Rasool. So I said to him, do you know how we, and he said, oh yeah, because he's my ex-prisoner, and I still see his mum. I still have cups of tea with his mum in Greenport. I said, well, ask him if he...
You know,
everybody's his ex-prisoner. When you went to the funeral, I mean, you know, all the generals and the police chiefs, they're all ex-prisoners. Sorry.
You know, Ibrahim Rasool was also my detainee for quite long with Trevor Manuel on Portland prison. And then on the time he was totally isolated alone. And I feel sorry for him. He get visits, but only one visit of 30 minutes, and then it was for 2 weeks. Security ranks to come and monitor themselves, and he got no visits. So they was fighting for Mandela, and he heard I worked with Mandela at that stage. Then I said to him one day, man, it's now lunchtime, just come with me quickly. I just want to take you to the doctor. He said, no, he's not sick. I said, but just take a walk with me to the doctor later. Just say because the judges want to know if you're still in good health, because we must write a report weekly. So I take him down, we walk in, Mandela was just in the courtyard. And then he was shocked, he didn't know what to do. And as Mandela came out, I said, Mandela, this Ibrahim Rasool, and they hugged each other, and then they have a quick chat. And I said, no, it's not a visit now, a meeting, you must come back with me. So he was very pleased. And you know, when he heard about my book, he said he would love my book also in Washington, D.C. I was launching with him. And even Trevor Manuel said, how I let him meet Mandela. I tell Trevor one day, I was going for a dentist appointment. He said, there's nothing wrong with his teeth. I said, oh, but the security man said, you must be tested. They must get a report from your teeth. So he was not happy to go, and he go there. Now the doctor's busy laying on this chair with his mouth open working. Then I brought Mandela in there. And I brought him in, and then he's laying here, he's seeing Mandela there. And he recognized he could have been Mandela, and he wanted to see him at that stage, but he can't get up. When the doctor finished there, but he stand up, he hugged Mandela, then said, no, you not must greet the president, he's not come, and then Mandela's turn to just look through his tent. So I made this arrangement. There was one occasion, if I can tell another story quickly. Oscar Mapeta was a very difficult person in prison, very difficult. He don't like the whites. He don't want to give us his anything. If you ask Oscar, he must be 9 o'clock ready for doctor, he will be still 9 o'clock in bed because his one leg was amputated, and he give us a hard time. Then one day I was very cross with Oscar Mapeta. I said, Oscar, tomorrow morning 9 o'clock, I'm going to leave for doctor. And then he just pulled his mouth and say nothing. I said, but I want you to meet Mandela in the passage. Then you can see his eyes very up, very clearly up. I said, yes, I want you to meet Mandela in the passage. And he said, is it true? I said, yes, I will make that. My word is my word. So I leave him. The next morning, 9 o'clock, the warder could not believe Oscar is in his legs. He don't want to have a wheelchair. And he want to start walking 9 o'clock to the front section. That moment I said to the sergeant who was there with Mandela in the isolation, I said, Mandela must come to see doctor. But I go to Mandela first and tell him, Oscar will come out that morning and you will meet in the corridor there, just by accident. But please talk to this old man because he's very stubborn, he gives me a hard time. So when Mandela came around the corner, Oscar started running. And he fall into his other. Mandela could have not really balance Oscar because of his leg is amputated. And then they have a chat there in course, I don't know what they discuss. But after that, I separate and I scream on him. I say, oh, not allowed to meet you, as if I don't know about the meeting. And he scream on the sergeant, take Mandela quickly away. He's not allowed to meet prisoners in passage. So when we get in a car, I was alone with Oscar. He said, thanks you, Mr. Brandt. I believe your word is your word. And after that, anything I do, Oscar will listen to me. Even in hospital, I was guarding him on an occasion. Water's not getting food, and I was so hungry that day. And when his food came, I said, Oscar, I really feel hungry. He called the matron. He said, the matron, he wants food for his friend. The matron said, no, you can't give Waters food. He said, then I'm not eating. And immediately I get also food in the hospital. So that's how Mandela's influence was to people around him.
We want to throw us out now.